My lords, it is my sad duty to inform you that Her Most Gracious Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, has passed away on Thursday, the 8th of September, 2022, at Balmoral Castle. I propose that, when certain necessary business has been transacted, a deputation consisting of Her Majesty, His Royal Highness, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Lord Chancellor, the Archbishop of York, the Prime Minister, the Clerk of the Council, and myself, shall wait on the King and inform him the Council is assembled. I now call on the Clerk of the Council to read aloud the text of the proclamation.
Whereas it has pleased Almighty God to call to His mercy our late Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George. We, therefore, the Lords spiritual and temporal of this realm, and members of the House of Commons, together with other members of Her late Majesty's Privy Council, and representatives of the realms and territories, aldermen and citizens of London and others, do now hereby, with one voice and consent of tongue and heart, publish and proclaim that the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of his other realms and territories, King, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith, to whom we do acknowledge all faith and obedience with humble affection, beseeching God, by whom kings and queens do reign, to bless His Majesty with long and happy years to reign over us. God save the King!
God save the King!
I now invite those on the platform to sign the proclamation.
All right, so those on the platform there are now signing the proclamation. The proclamation for King Charles as the new monarch of Great Britain has been made there after the meeting of the Accession Council. There you can see the Prime Minister of the UK, Liz Truss, also present on the platform. She is part of the Accession Council that met today, after which this formal announcement has been made. This is a historic moment in a lot of ways. First of all, this accession is, the council itself is meeting after 70 years because Queen Elizabeth II was the longest reigning monarch of Britain. So this event is taking place after 70 years after the demise of Queen Elizabeth II. Now the reins in the hands of her son, King Charles III. We saw Prince of Wales now, Prince William, signing that proclamation first, followed by Camilla, who is now going to be known as Queen Consort. That was the wish and the desire of Queen Elizabeth II. Remember, in February, on the eve of her 78th year to the throne, she had put out a statement where she said that when King or Charles takes over as king, she hopes that Camilla will get support as Queen Consort.
Council. 1. Ordering the proclamation to be printed and published in specialist supplements in the London, Edinburgh and Belfast Gazettes. 2. Directing the Lord Chancellor to affix the Great Seal to the proclamation proclaiming His Majesty King Charles III. 3. Directing the Kings, heralds and pursuivants of arms to attend at the Court of St. James to proclaim His Majesty King Charles III. 4. Directing the Lord Mayor, the Court of Aldermen and Commons of London to attend at the Royal Exchange to proclaim His Majesty King Charles III. 5. Directing His Majesty's Secretary of State for Defence to give directions for the firing of guns at Hyde Park as soon as His Majesty is proclaimed. 6. Directing the Constable of His Majesty's Tower of London to give directions for the firing of guns at the Tower of London as soon as His Majesty is proclaimed. 7. Directing His Majesty's Secretary of State for Scotland to cause the proclamation for proclaiming His Majesty King Charles III to be published in Scotland. 8. Directing the Clerk of the Council to issue circular letters for causing His Majesty King Charles III to be proclaimed are hereby approved, and that concludes the business for this part of the Council. I now invite the deputation party to accompany me to wait on the King in the Council chamber.
All right, so the first part of the proclamation ceremony now is over. They are headed to the chambers where they will wait upon the king. That is the announcement that has just been made. This is the Accession Council that you are seeing moving now from one room to the other at St. James Palace. They were on the podium. That was the Accession Council, which also comprised the current Prime Minister Liz Truss. The people you see there are at the moment now, these are about 200 members of the Privy Council. This includes former MPs to former Prime Ministers to members of the clergy. They've all gathered at the St. James Palace. So you can see Theresa May, David Cameron, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson as well among the 200 Privy Council members, from members of Parliament to former Prime Ministers to members of the clergy, who have all gathered at the St. James Palace. Those on the podium were part of the Accession Council, which has made the proclamation of Charles now being King Charles III of Great Britain. Several other points were also announced, which basically were procedural about each proclamation and how it's going to be made in various parts of Great Britain. Let me go across to our two guests who are still with us. Nick is there, as well as Parvez Alam. Nick, coming first to you now. This function that we are seeing at the moment, after which the Accession Council has now gone to another room, to a chamber where they're going to wait on the king. Explain to us the significance of this entire ceremony now. For many of us, it might, look a little archaic, but this is the first time that it's being televised live.
Yes. Have you got me? I don't seem to be...
All right, but we can hear you, Nick. Go ahead.
You can hear me, all right.
Yes.
I said earlier that this was a little like the swearing in of an Indian president. Well, I think I'm put in my place because this is much more elaborate, isn't it? Yes. It's very ceremonial. It's quite archaic, as you say. It is our system. And presumably, this is something like what happened 70 years ago when the Queen was sworn in, if that's the right expression. But as you say, it's the first time it's televised. So it's the first time any of us is seeing this or experiencing this. I'm quite intrigued. What most intrigued me was the absence of the king. This took place, I presume we're going to see the king in a moment, but there was no presence by King Charles, his wife, his son, but not he himself. So it took place in his absence, and now, but presumably, the next stage is to tell him he's king officially now. I don't know. It is very archaic, but that is how monarchies work.
Yes. Yes, absolutely, Nick. I mean, when I meant archaic in the sense that to see a ceremony which you associate with the past being televised, that's interesting in itself. A significant moment there for Britain. Parvez Alam, your comments on this entire ceremony that's taken place, and we're now going to see King Charles in the position of the monarch of Great Britain. What are the challenges now that he is likely to face?
Maha, you are not the only one watching it for the first time, and interestingly, Nick has already confirmed this is the first time he's watching it, and in fact, lots and lots of people, rather majority of the people at this time are watching this accession, this proclamation for the first time. Reasons are simple. A, this happened in 1952, and then coronation took place, coronation took place in 1953, so those were the days. And for 70 years, Queen Elizabeth was reigning in this country. And now this is being televised. And for the first time, it's being shown live. The whole ceremony, there was television. You can see lots of pictures and films of Queen Elizabeth in color. But then those are just clips and from various archives. So this is the first time we are watching this ceremony live. So the whole Britain, in a way, hasn't seen it before. So this is a real experience, as you put it, archaic and, and traditional as well. Sometimes it looks full of pomp and show, but then people love it in this country. And I think all over the world also they have so much respect, or even if I would say that there's so much glamour attached to the royalty here in this country. So this is what we are watching it. And we are going to watch it, as I said earlier, for the next 2-3 weeks. And then, as Nick put it, then the coronation, which will take place later. So this continues. And then the traditions also continue. We are going to watch lots of interesting things that nobody has seen them before, because everything is being live.
All right. So now we can see some more pictures coming in. Let's quickly upsound that and try to listen into what's happening. You can see the former prime ministers there. As I was pointing out, this is the Privy Council comprising about 200 members, members of Parliament, former prime ministers, members of the clergy, all part of this Privy Council. They are now standing by. I understand that perhaps King Charles III will now step out. This after the Accession Council went to wait went into his chambers and in fact to wait on him. This was the announcement made just before these visuals started coming in. Let's listen in to exactly what's happening at the moment. We'll take a very quick break, but we'll be back the minute we can see any movement there in the St. James Palace. The proclamation has been made. Prince Charles Philip Arthur George is now King Charles III. That proclamation was read out just a short while back in an elaborate ceremony that is still underway at St. James Palace. 200 or so people have gathered in the room. In fact, right after the proclamation was made and before the documents were signed there, and we saw Prince William signing the document first. God Save the King was loudly, in fact, as a slogan read out by the people there in the room. Now, some movement there at St. James Palace that we can see. The doors have been opened and we can expect, all right, we can see UK Prime Minister Liz Truss now walking out, being followed by the rest of the people. Many of them would be members of the Accession Council. We can see Penny Mordaunt coming back out. She had made that announcement today. And Camilla is also now stepping out back to the podium along with Prince William there.
Business for part 2 of the Council. Your Majesty, to make your declaration.
My lords, ladies and gentlemen, it is my most sorrowful duty to announce to you the death of my beloved mother, the Queen. I know how deeply you, the entire nation, and I think I may say the whole world, sympathize with me in the irreparable loss we've all suffered. It is the greatest consolation to me to know of the sympathy expressed by so many to my sister and brothers, and that such overwhelming affection and support should be extended to our whole family in our loss. To all of us as a family, as to this kingdom and the wider family of nations of which it is a part, my mother gave an example of lifelong love and of selfless service. My mother's reign was unequaled in its duration, its dedication, and its devotion. Even as we grieve, we give thanks for this most faithful life. I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty which have now passed to me. In taking up these responsibilities, I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set in upholding constitutional government and to seek the peace, harmony, and prosperity of the peoples of these islands and of the Commonwealth realms and territories throughout the world. In this purpose, I know that I shall be upheld by the affection and loyalty of the peoples whose sovereign I have been called upon to be, and that in the discharge of these duties, I will be guided by the counsel of their elected parliaments. In all this, I am profoundly encouraged by the constant support of my beloved wife. I take this opportunity to confirm my willingness and intention to continue the tradition of surrendering the hereditary revenues, including the Crown Estate, to my government for the benefit of all, in return for the sovereign grant which supports my official duties as head of state and head of nation. And in carrying out the heavy task that has been laid upon me, and to which I now dedicate what remains to me of my life, I pray for the guidance and help of Almighty God.
I have with humble duty to crave your Majesty's permission for the publication of your gracious speech.
Approved.
Concerning the security of the Church of Scotland.
I understand that the law requires that I should, at my accession to the Crown, take and subscribe the oath relating to the security of the Church of Scotland. I am ready to do so at this first opportunity. I, Charles III, by the grace of God of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of my other realms and territories, King, Defender of the Faith, do faithfully promise and swear that I shall inviolably maintain and preserve the settlement of the true Protestant religion as established by the laws made in Scotland in prosecution of the claim of right, and particularly by an act intituled An Act for Securing the Protestant Religion and Presbyterian Church Government, and by the acts passed in the Parliament of both kingdoms for union of the two kingdoms, together with the government, worship, discipline, rights and privileges of the Church of Scotland. So help me God.
I now invite your Majesty to subscribe both copies of the instrument, confirming the oath has been taken. I now invite the witnesses to His Majesty's oath to sign both copies of the instrument.
All right, the king has taken oath now, and after taking oath, he signed the papers that he has, in fact, taken the oath. The witnesses are signing the papers now, starting off with Prince William and Camilla. Both of them signed that paper there. The king has said that he will be guided by the council, the Privy Council, as he takes on the responsibility of the new monarch of Great Britain. You can see the pictures from outside, which we were just, a short while back cutting to. Those were the scenes on the right hand side of your television screen, scenes from outside the Buckingham Palace. On the left hand side is what you're witnessing at St. James Palace, where this a proclamation was made at sharp 2:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. This was about 10 a.m. British Standard Time that this announcement of proclamation was made, after which the Accession Council went in and escorted the king out. King Charles III then took oath, signed the papers. The witnesses have signed the papers, and after which the functions outside the Buckingham Palace as well. Now remember, the flags that were flying at half-mast because of the mourning period are for a short period of time now in full mast. There you can see that picture, live visuals coming in. This will only be for a brief moment to announce that the proclamation, the official transition of power has happened now to the new monarch in Britain, after which till such time as the funeral takes place for Queen Elizabeth II, the flags will again go into half-mast. But this is a ceremony. Meanwhile, up till Sunday, we will also be seeing many further proclamations, a wave of further proclamations that will take place across the UK. The king has pledged in the first televised address yesterday, after taking over the reins of Great Britain, that he will follow in the footsteps of his mother.
Made public.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council for recording the oath relating to the security of the Church of Scotland, to be transmitted to the Court of Session, to be recorded in the books of Sederant, and afterwards lodged in the State Papers of Scotland and in the Council Register.
Approved.
Draft order in council determining the form of proclamation for proclaiming Your Majesty in the realms and in the British Overseas Territories.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising the Lord Chancellor to make use of the Great Seal for sealing all things whatsoever that pass the Great Seal, until another Great Seal be prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising the Lord Privy Seal, if need be, to make use of the existing Privy Seal until another Privy Seal is prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Drafts of 3 orders in council authorising Your Majesty's principal Secretaries of State, the Lord Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, to use the existing seals until other seals be prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising Your Majesty's Secretary of State for Northern Ireland to make use of the existing Great Seal of Northern Ireland until another seal be prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising Your Majesty's First Minister of Scotland to make use of the Great Seal of Scotland until another Great Seal of Scotland be prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising Your Majesty's First Minister of Wales to make use of the existing Welsh seal until another Welsh seal be prepared and authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council authorising the public seals, authorising the respective public seals lately in use elsewhere than in the United Kingdom to be made use of until new seals be prepared and their use duly authorised.
Approved.
Draft of an order in council confirming Your Majesty's wishes in relation to the Sovereign Grant Act 2011, to continue the tradition of surrendering the hereditary revenues, including the Crown Estate, to your government for the benefit of all, in return for the sovereign grant which supports your official duties as head of state and head of nation.
Approved.
Drafts of 2 proclamations. 1. Appointing the day of Her late Majesty's state funeral as a bank holiday in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. 2. Appointing the day of Her late Majesty's state funeral as a bank holiday in Scotland. And of 2 orders in council directing the Lord Chancellor to affix the Great Seal to the proclamations.
Approved.
I now invite Your Majesty to sign both proclamations.
All right, let me now go across to our guests. Nick, coming to you now, this is a very traditional ceremony that's taking place. I think the only thing missing from what perhaps it would have been many years ago, long back, that somebody would stand in the balcony and make that announcement for the people to be known, because this time it's being televised live for everybody to see that entire ceremony and proclamation, correct?
And that, Your Majesty, concludes today's business for the Council.
None of us has ever seen this before, and it is quite an elaborate process. And by the way, we were talking earlier about this being the first time it's being televised. Now, I don't want to admit my age, but I can just remember the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, and that was the first time a coronation had ever been televised, and that was in black and white.
And the witnesses
so we've come on 70 years, and we've now got a different ceremony being televised, and that's in full colour, and I might say very well televised, lots of cameras, and I think the people will be absolutely intrigued by what's going on here. The standout thing to me was the pledge by the new king to be advised by the Privy Council. That really goes back to what I said earlier about the monarch having no power.
I now ask Privy Councillors present to exit via the picture gallery.
Do you want me to pause or shall I
sign the proclamation, which is laid out in the lower corridor? Thank you all for attending today.
With that, the proclamation ceremony stands over, and in fact quite an elaborate function there. Nick, sorry, we had to cut across as the ceremony was getting over. Go ahead.
Well, the standout thing for me from this was the royal pledge to be guided by the Privy Council, which I think gives you an insight into how monarchy works. Just as I said earlier, an act of parliament becomes law when it is signed by the monarch. That's the formality. The reality is that it's a group of privy councillors who do that signing. So even there, the king's signature is not crucial. It's symbolic, as I've said several times during this discussion. But this is our machinery of government, and we're seeing it in a way that we have not seen before. We are seeing the mass of privy councillors. Privy councillors, roughly speaking, are cabinet ministers past and present. So you've got different complexions, you've got different political parties represented there. When you become a cabinet minister, you are invited to join the Privy Council, and certain other key figures like the leaders of the church and indeed the senior members of government in the provinces, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. So the Privy Councillor is the great and the good, and they stand above the government and below the monarch. So it's a sort of three-stage process, and we've never seen it like this before. We never normally see meetings of the Privy Council. When the Queen could not, receive an envoy previously, it was the Privy Council, it was a group of members of the Privy Council who would do that. So what we're really learning today is the important role that this Privy Council plays between the government and the monarch. But the other thing, if I'm still allowed to carry on, the other thing that struck me was this is the last time you will see anybody talk down to the king, as it were. Penny Mordaunt, who was the master of ceremonies for this occasion, was instructing him, or indeed inviting him, to approve all those procedures. And I'd never before seen somebody speak to a monarch, list things and expect him to say approved, approved, approved. But from now onwards, everyone looks up to the monarch because he's the one who, without whom the procedures cannot go ahead. It really is intriguing, this process. We've had quite an incredible week, and this is an incredible part of it. The one thing we're waiting now is to know about the date of the funeral for Queen Elizabeth. The hot money is that it's going to be on Monday week, on the 19th of September, and you're already announcing that President Biden intends to attend.
That's right.
Being a monarch, it's normal that you get the fellow monarchs, male and female, attending. So we'll get European royalty, we might get Japanese royalty, we might get Middle Eastern royalty. It's essentially, for them, it's not a political occasion, it's a royal occasion. But as we've already identified, President Biden is both head of state and head of government. So it makes a lot of sense, and I'm not at all surprised that he has declared his intention to attend. But it won't be all government leaders, because, for example, take a country like Spain, I would think the monarch would come rather than the head of government. So it is a royal affair, and it'll be intriguing, because how many royals can you get in one Abbey? It'll be in Westminster Abbey where the funeral takes place. So that's the one detail we're waiting to hear about. But the succession, as I've said so many times, a succession has taken place. It took place the moment the Queen died. This is the first formal stage, putting that in writing and getting the right people to witness. Look at the picture now. You've got about, well, not in that picture, but I counted 6 former prime ministers there on the front row of both major parties, and lots of other key figures, including the First Minister of Scotland, for example. It's a meeting of the great and the good, the people who rule us, frankly, all in one room at the same time.
Yes, absolutely. About 200 people over there, largely the Accession Council, which was on the podium earlier on when the proclamation was made, and the Privy Council there standing by as the proclamation was made. Then the King walks into the room and he takes oath, and finally the papers are signed with the witnesses there as well. Fresh visuals coming in now. You can see all those who attended the ceremony today also signing on papers. I think this is just for record keeping as to who was present there, considering that this is in some sense a traditional ceremony, and all these people are witnesses to that transition that we are seeing from Queen Elizabeth II, who passed away, to her son now, who is King Charles III. Former Prime Minister Boris Johnson can be seen there. Theresa May, you can just see her walking by behind him. Meanwhile, outside the Buckingham Palace, we were seeing a lot of colourful scenes where we could see some sort of traditional events taking place as this proclamation was being made at the St. James Palace. So on the right hand side of your television screens, what you can see are pictures that are coming in live from outside. This is a small stretch of about 5 minutes drive from Buckingham Palace to St. James Palace, and the entire stretch you could also see many people standing outside, of course, for everybody around UK. This is an event, especially those in London, not to be missed. This is once in a lifetime sort of an event. First of all, this is in itself happening after 70 long years, and therefore a lot of curious onlookers out on the streets. There's excitement in the air as well. The fact that there is continued mourning, but the taking over by the new king also calls in for some celebration there, and therefore we saw even yesterday people gathered outside the Buckingham Palace as King Charles III walked into the palace, people greeting and welcoming him. Now the flag will fly at full mast for a short duration because this proclamation has been made, then again goes back to half mast because the mourning continues for the Queen till the funeral. The official date of the funeral is not yet announced, but it is expected that it would be around the 19th. World leaders are going to congregate for the funeral. US President Joe Biden has already said today that he is going to London for the funeral. He said he's not aware of all the details, but he is going to go for it. Tony Blair there on your television screens there as well, signing that book that all the visitors there today to St. James Palace have done so. Now, let me go across to Parvez Alam, who is still with us, along with Nick, who's also joining us here on the show. Parvez, we've seen, and I was just mentioning, and we can still see those pictures there of a lot of people gathered around Buckingham Palace. Clearly, a moment which is somber because the Queen has passed away, but also a sense of excitement because King Charles is now the new monarch. All right, let me go across to Nick. Nick, your comments on that, please.
Yes, I mean, a fantastic assembly outside Buckingham Palace and indeed other royal palaces in other parts of the country. I don't know, that's just showing you that the affection in which Queen Elizabeth was held. One or two of my friends who are not standout monarchists have gone to Buckingham Palace, or yesterday or today. So it's a national mood, I would say. We've gone into a very strange period between the death of the Queen and the completion of the process. In other words, the funeral in about a week's time. The mood, I think I was asked before, are we in a mood of sorrow? Are we in a mood of celebration? It's quite hard to answer that. We're in a mood of transition. Both things are there. And I think we didn't really realize how the extent of the formalities would take place. I thought the succession was concluded on Thursday when King Charles was proclaimed, and then Friday when he addressed the nation, a very powerful speech he made to the nation. But no, it's going to carry on for some time, as you can see. And another thing, those who observe the politics of these things, I'll say a little note about the politics. The death occurred just after the new Prime Minister had announced measures to alleviate what we're calling our cost of living crisis, especially the high price of energy. And they were debating that in Parliament when news of the Queen's deteriorating health reached Parliament. And since then, politics has stopped. Politics has absolutely stopped. Of course, things that need to happen will go on, but in the pictures you're seeing political opposites, political rivals, side by side in the ceremony at the commemoration at St. Paul's Cathedral last night, for example, talking with each other as if they're normal people, if I can put it like that. Normally they don't have time for each other. They only want to confront each other in Parliament. But normal politics has literally come to a halt. And that is quite intriguing, especially with a new Prime Minister so recently proclaimed in office. But the ceremonial of the royal transition has completely taken over. And that applies, of course, to the media as well. From the announcement of the death onwards, the broadcast media have been more or less wall-to-wall royal coverage with very little else. And the news bulletins have hardly even mentioned the important announcement that Liz Truss made to Parliament on Thursday morning. So that's the phase we're in. It's a rather curious era of melancholy and I don't know what, but politics has taken the back seat.
All right, let me also introduce our other guest on the show, Farooq Dhondy, British writer, is also with us here. Farooq, in some sense, what we are seeing today is marrying of two worlds there. For the first time, the proclamation is being televised. A proclamation in itself and monarchy, many would associate that with with an era gone by. What's your comment when you see these traditions playing out on television?
Well, my first comment is, and no Britisher is going to say this, as an immigrant, I think I'm entitled, that Britain is a very tribal society. They don't think of themselves as such. They think of themselves as the most advanced democracy in the world, and in a sense they are. But this, the adherence to monarchy, the love that people express for the Queen, people say she was my grandmother, people cry, they gather outside Buckingham Palace. It really is an extremely tribal show. What happened is, the tradition is that the Queen is dead, long live the King, God save the King. It comes as the same phrase, one phrase follows the other, and one doesn't know whether the mourning is going to take over from the joy of the celebration of a new monarch. Of course, we call them here monarchs, but they aren't really monarchs. It's a change of royalty. Ever since Oliver Cromwell chopped off Charles I's head, the monarchy has kind of dwindled, and the evolution right through, even through Queen Victoria's time, has become figurehead royalty. And that's what we saw today. We saw a huge procession outside, 21 gun salutes, not 21, 71 gun salutes from all over the world and all over the towns and in Gibraltar. And what you saw was a transition of people who are really in power, the parliamentarians signing approvals of the king, saying, yes, I approve, yes, I approve, yes, I approve. All he had to do was nod his head. The real power, of course, lies with Parliament and has always.
That's right.
Even with Queen Victoria, right? The East India Company, she appointed viceroys, but the viceroys did as they liked in India. The Queen had very little say in what went on in the colonies. The viceroys were Roman emperors on their own. So that was the designation then. Today,
thanks for explaining that quite lucidly, Farooq Dhondy. Yes, what we saw today was the proclamation of Charles being made a king. He'll be known as King Charles III now. Prince William is now the Prince of Wales. He takes over from his father. There were certain other proclamations that were made. One important one with regards to Queen's funeral, and we don't know the exact date, but that date will now henceforth in the UK be a bank holiday.